But your people are your product, and people are complex, and you can't control that. So I'd always said to Jack, when you've had enough of the nightclubs, you should start a social agency called The Social Shepherd.
I believe co-founders are a great thing, but when it's like matched up in life as well, there's a bigger purpose to what we're working towards.
You've gone from 2 to 60 plus people in the last 6 years.
If you search social media agency, you'll probably see us number 1 or 2.
You're defined as a social agency, but there's a huge element of creative into it.
Every single social agency needs a huge.
How have you managed to work with multi-billion-dollar companies now?
Your jobs as you know it will not stand in a year to 2 years' time.
What is the long-term vision? Are you building to ride the wave forever, or are you working towards an exit at some point? Cool. Zoë, Jack, welcome to Agency Giants.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for having
having
us.
us.
So, congratulations on getting married last year.
Thank you.
It took me some time.
Yeah, it did. It took a very long time.
Yeah, 6 years of running the business.
And 10 years together.
Well, there we go. So you were 4 years together before you
Yeah.
even started the company.
Yeah, about that. Yeah, we met whenever I was 19, and we started the agency when I was 23.
What was the catalyst to you starting a business together?
Oh, I mean, that's a whole. Well, do you want to go into it?
Go on then. So I had an events business before. I think you did a similar thing in nightclubs. So I ran a freshers bar crawl in 25 cities through sort of like 2013 to 2017. So our first few clients were actually a number of the nightclubs and bars. As a part of the sort of, I guess I was a freelancer back then when we first started, and I transitioned from the nightclub stuff. Zoë was working in 2 agencies in Bristol.
Not at the same time, just to clarify.
Yeah. And then, so I sort of had that initial grounding from the social side, from selling tickets, building hype, anticipation, through that. And then Zoe's more, a 2-year agency background from there that she had.
And I had always said to Jack when he was doing the event stuff, he knew social better. And I'd spent, a couple years now working with like digital marketing professionals in agencies, and I worked in a new business role. But because they knew what Jack did, I would consistently get requests from the tech team, like, "Oh, can you show me how to upload a CSV to Facebook Ads Manager? It's like we've sold this into like this huge automotive brand, but we don't know how to do it," type thing. And I was like, what is going on? So I'd always said to Jack, when you've had enough of the nightclubs, you should start a social agency called The Social Shepherd because of your last name, and it works really well. So then when he was like, I'm 25, I've had enough, get me out of these clubs. And he was like, I'm going to do it. And I was like, no, I'm really jealous. I want to do it. And then it was coming to the end of, I had a 6-month probation at the second agency job I was working at, and I was coming to the end of that. And I knew that I was going to pass it, but then I was going to be on a 3-month notice period, which is a really long notice period for a junior role. But I remember being like, I have to quit. So I literally just quit one day. I was like, I don't really care what happens. You were a bit like, no, don't quit until we have more clients. And I think back then it was just like my youth and naivety. Like, I don't think I'd necessarily be that rash at this age. But yeah, and then we just kind of started from there. Yeah.
Amazing. Was it challenging working together as transitioning from partners to business partners?
I think genuinely it's been the most powerful thing that we've had as business partners, if I look at it from that perspective, because we're all working towards one goal. There's no disagreements about where our future is, where we're heading, what we want to achieve. And I believe co-founders are a great thing anyway, but when it's like matched up in life as well, I think there's a bigger purpose to what we're working towards and everything else like that. So I think it's only really helped us. And I guess on the flip side, from like co-founders, we have very different skill sets in what we bring to it as well.
I think for us, it's aided the business in the sense that if one of us is working at the weekend, the other one's working at the weekend. So it's like because we've been doing it together, and I think owning a business can be quite lonely in some ways, but because we've done it together, it's helped us push through those difficult times a little bit better. I mean, I'm not going to lie, like it, we've maybe had a handful of arguments through the process of it, where one person maybe feels like they're giving more or vice versa at certain points in time, but that's always going to happen. And I think, to be honest, like we're in a really good rhythm and have been for the last couple of years. Like it takes you a little bit of time, but as Jack said, and our team always say, they're like, Jack and I are like night and day in terms of our personality. So people kind of know, oh, that's a Jack thing, that's a Zoe thing, and it works quite well there. But I always say, like, I wouldn't want to own an agency on my own. I think that would just terrify me.
A lot of the bigger guys do have business partners. It's like most of the guys that I know have got a partner, because it's a stressful business model, dealing with people every day, not just clients but team and all the complexities of that. And if not, you just end up venting to senior management and then killing their morale, and you're down the pan. But you two obviously have these polarizing skill sets. From day one, were you working? How long was it just you two, and what were you doing inside the company? How long did it take to then be like, shit, we need to bring people in?
For the first 18 months, it was just the two of us, and I think I'd never actually worked in social before. Like, I loved social and I always wanted to, but I hadn't. I'd worked in a new business team and then as a strategic planner at an independent media agency. So I had to build up my skill set quite a lot. So the first 18 months, it was just the two of us. I think we brought in Martin, who was our first ever finance manager, maybe after like the first year actually, but he was on a
he was doing bookkeeping.
He was doing bookkeeping for us on a part-time basis. But our proper first employee was Izzy, who actually left the business and came back. So she's still with us today. But after 18 months, and I think when we look at our trajectory of growth, it's the moment that we started making that hiring decision that we just shot up straight away. And I think, like, some people might say, oh, you should have made that decision quicker to hire someone. We could have done, but I don't think we would have been as prepared to train, as prepared to handle what we were going to need to do if we'd done it any earlier. I think that first 18 months are quite important for us. And we were able to think about, when we first did it, we were like, well, we could just be freelancers and we could travel and that would be a lovely life. But we got to sort of the 6-7 month mark and we were like, no, we actually really want to build something of value. Like we really want to go on this journey together. So it gave us that time to figure it out. But to answer your question in short, it took 18 months.
Was it first of all, what position can you remember financially you were in on that, at the point of hiring someone?
We were at about £12,000 a month, 12 to 14k a month.
Yeah.
So not like anything crazy, and we could certainly continue servicing what we were already doing as a pair. We kind of took our time with it, but I think it was definitely the best thing I do. And when I speak to sort of young agency founders and stuff, like, one of my things is, as soon as you can, try and hire and build a team. That will give you the momentum, the motivation to continue pushing on. Yeah. I know it's the most daunting thing, but like, it is so worthwhile.
But I also think, like, as Jack said, it's such a huge responsibility that I think some people take too lightly, maybe, in terms of supporting someone, supporting a household. So it is a decision that needs to be taken really carefully. And equally, we were sat at that sort of 12 to 14 mark when we started bringing people in to do more of the doing. Naturally, it meant that we could focus on making what we could offer better and better. Like, I remember looking at one of our first proposals. It was like £800 a month to do someone's email, build their website, like do everything, which is ridiculous and not something we do now. But we needed that time to
on a Word doc.
Yeah, it's awful, horrific.
Nice. Still got it somewhere.
Nice, keep it there for memory. That's nice. Yeah, I mean, my first client was less than that, I'm sure. And so you were offering like a full stack from day one. You were kind of doing everything.
Well, we were social, but like, naturally, as you're taking on small businesses and they have needs and stuff, they're like, oh, well, could you do our email for us? Could you do this? And you kind of are in that fight mode. So you're kind of taking on everything that you can to get revenue in the door. So yeah, we don't do that anymore.
I would say quite quickly after that, though, it did really focus into social overall, but more so, I guess, organic and paid was the sort of core focuses.
But I will say that time period of doing a bit more than that was also really good for us, because I think we now have a very good understanding of, like, well, maybe it's slightly outdated now, but like the back end of Shopify sites, like how we would look at that data, more D2C skill sets than you might traditionally see in more of a creative social media agency. And it has served us really, really well. Like, I think from a strategic perspective, when we're speaking with clients, we're able to really tailor because we know more than just the skill set that we sell.
When you talk about social, we're talking about initially, I suppose, running the organic socials on behalf of businesses. That's at least from my experience with the smaller businesses, quite a low ticket service. How have you managed to evolve through, the client caliber over time? Because you have worked with, multi-billion-dollar companies now, which is of course a gradual process. But yeah, I think lots of people hear organic social, at least newer agencies, and think, oh, incredibly time intensive, very low ticket. So how did you pave that early on?
That's a good question. It's definitely time intensive.
And doesn't get the respect that it deserves either. And I feel like as an industry, we've kind of done that to ourselves, because you do have people that will say, oh, I'll manage all of your socials for £800 a month. But actually, whenever the skill that we may now have within our team can quite often get disregarded. So, okay, yes, someone could manage it for £800 a month. We probably are going to cost at least 10 times that, to be entirely honest. But there's going to be much more strategic thinking and a better plethora of skills there.
I think it's really come from the early days, that constant sort of like building of confidence, and sort of going, in the early days we'd go, okay, the next person we speak to, our price is just going to rise. Price is going to rise every time we spoke to a new client thereafter. And I think it was just sort of a continuous, evolution of increasing our prices, increasing our skill set, building our brand as an agency, develop, who we are and what we can offer, so that when we do have those bigger clients that come in, we actually have the capability to do so, and then stand on our own 2 feet in terms of being able to proudly say this is how much it is to do exactly what you need.
Yeah, and I think over time, like all of our leads, we don't do any outbound as an agency. We never really have. It's all been inbound.
From day one?
At the very start, we used like some intermediary sites.
No, there's a site called bark.com.
Yeah. So
that was very early days.
People per hour, we used that a little bit.
Those type of sites to begin with.
Did a bit of that, but then...
Then we transitioned... we didn't have a website at that stage. Then we built a website, or just a landing page. Then I was like, right, Google Ads makes sense. High intent users searching for social media agency, Facebook ads agency. Worked out customer acquisition cost for that. Proved that to be successful. And then I was like, kind of fed up of giving Google my money here. So then we lent into the SEO side of things, to a place now where we've got our site up to being sort of 80,000 a month in organic traffic.
Wow, that's good.
Which is not bad for an agency
site,
and a lot of that is commercial intent. People searching if you search social media agency, you'll probably see us number 1 or 2. So that obviously gives us a lot of leads per day, and it's now a case of truly vetting, truly making sure we're speaking to the right people, not just everyone and anyone.
So it all came, like all of the leads have come organically. Particularly, we had a bit of a pivotal point when we brought on one of the largest hotel chains in the UK, basically. And I remember you sending me the thing, and I was in a taxi back from a client meeting or something, and I was like, oh my God, if we nail this,
life's
send me to
changed
heaven,
forever.
oh my God. And it was only like a 15k a month or something budget, and we were so excited. And this is only like 4 years ago now, 3.5.
3 to 4 years ago.
But we pitched it, won it, and I think back then we were probably one of the smallest agencies that brand was speaking to, and it's honestly just kind of gone on like that. And then we had a team strategy day the other month, and I was like, our 15k retainers used to be our biggest retainers not even that long ago, but now we're up into like your 35 and your 40 retainers. Not always, and I think there is absolutely a place, and we do very much still work with some small to medium-sized businesses, and the main thing for us is, can the team get behind it, and can they get excited by the product that they're going to be selling? But yeah, there has been a huge shift, and we're very lucky for Jack's SEO skills that it's all been inbound.
Yeah, it's amazing. You must have so many leads that you have to, just
Hundreds
let go,
a month,
because it's like early on, as you described, you're, I always describe it as opportunity is scarce in the early days, and so you're saying yes to everything, and you're like, come on, give it to me, and then opportunity is suddenly abundant. You've got all this opportunity, and you have to really painfully say no to everything. And so, what do you have a system for that? Are you referring to smaller agencies? Do you have like a low ticket that you get people onto?
We probably should, but no, we don't refer them to anyone. They just fall into the abyss a bit.
We do sometimes.
We do sometimes.
Yeah, we've got like a couple independent smaller agencies in Bath where our headquarters is that we will pass leads on to.
But yeah, a lot of it just goes somewhere else, I guess, really. Yeah. But no, it's like hundreds a month. So yeah, we can definitely pick and choose and be selective, and I think that's really the challenge now, is focusing our attention and energy on the right opportunities. It's easy to get carried away, like you said, but it's and then sometimes it can get very overwhelming in terms of the velocity and volume of pitches that we're doing, and not just me and Zoe that are doing them. There's multiple team members across the team that get involved in pitches, and they're laborious. We spend a lot of time on pitches. It's not like we don't have like a standardized product or service that we're selling. It's very bespoke. We put a lot of time into creative as a part of that. It's some serious hours and energy that goes into it.
And you can't go for everything, because like Jack said, in the early days it was very much Jack and I owned the new business process, and we did a lot of that. But now there'll be pitches that will go out the door that, okay, one of us will probably have an eyeball on, but we've got a very talented team that are much better at a lot of things than we are. So they're managing that. So we've got to be really careful of their capacity and what their availability is. And they're all generally really, really excited about new business, but we can't say yes to everything. But I will say that, there'll be certain things. We had like a really exciting lead come in, and the team's busy. Like, they're a busy team at the minute. They're like, we can't say no to that. So I think it's really good that we have a team behind us, that they're like, if an opportunity comes in, they have so much pride and integrity as marketers themselves that they'll be like, I'm not going to turn down the opportunity to work on that no matter how busy I am.
What's the criteria of that? How are you defining, like, okay, this company is worth us reaching out to, or going for tender in some cases?
Yeah. I guess it's sometimes it doesn't always have to be a sexy, exciting brand. I think what gets us going is the challenge or the transformation that they're looking to go on. Obviously, the sexy and cool brands are, get you excited when you first see it as well. But sometimes it might be, a brand that on paper looks quite boring, but actually when you start asking the questions and getting behind it, there's so much that can, creativity that can actually be applied to that. And that's almost the challenge to the team, is like, how can we take this boring brand and make it the best in its industry? Yeah,
like we recently pitched for an internet privacy brand. Sounds really boring on paper, but the pitch was insane. Like, the ideas the team came up with, I was blown away with, and they absolutely smashed it. But yeah, I do genuinely believe that the unsexy brands are the funnest, and the biggest thing is appetite to be bold by the brand team themselves. I don't think on social you can really get you can get to a point, but if your client isn't willing to have their boundaries pushed a little bit, you're kind of going to be stuck in the same cycle, and there's going to be a limit to what social can do for you. And we quite often have situations where we'll be speaking to maybe a social team or a digital team, and they're like, this is what we want to be doing, but we're going to have to warm the rest of the business up to this. And that's a journey we've taken a lot of brands on, and we're still on those journeys with them. So I would say it's like, yes, the sexy brand name, but if you get a sexy brand name and they're not willing to do anything different, or they just want you to just plug into what they're currently doing and just be the hands behind it, that's going to be fun for a while, but the team still want to be challenged and they want to be consistently getting better. So a lot of it actually has to do with the chemistry of the brand and those initial intro calls. So for us to decide to take a lead, of which we get hundreds a month, to intro call, that Jack or Jacob, who's in our new business call, might take. It will tend to be around the brand. If we feel like they're going to have the budget to be able to work with us, and we might have some questions that we email over. And then they'll take that intro call. But if the vibes aren't there in the intro call, and we don't think that we're going to be able to do a strong enough job for it, then we won't take it forward, because it's just not worth doing, and it's a waste of everyone's time.
Because of the amount of time spent per pitch, we have to be going in like, we can make a difference, and we've got a good chance of winning that. If we don't get those feelings, then we're setting ourselves up for failure, to be fair.
It sounds to me like you're defined as a social agency, but there's a huge element of creative into the.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you're really a creative, performance creative agency to an extent.
Well, I guess what we do is like creative is kind of at the center of the business, because everything needs creative, and then we've got our organic social and we've got our paid social side of it. And I think actually every single social agency needs a huge creative selection. Without content, there's nothing to post on organic social. So it's literally the heart of it. From a paid perspective as well, I think that is a bit of a USP for us as a social agency, because our paid media team are true trained performance marketers. Like, they get heavier into the technical detail than you would traditionally find a social agency. And we also offer paid search, so we're managing everyone's sort of full digital media mix within reason there. But with the recent changes on Meta and other platforms, creative is just becoming so much bigger. So all of your targeting is becoming automated. That's kind of going to go away, and the role of a traditional media buyer won't exist in a couple of years' time. So the creative is your targeting. So we've kind of recognized that creative is where we need to be growing, both from that brand awareness perspective and that D2C performance perspective as well. So that we have made a huge investment in that over the last 12 months. And I think creativity and how we plug AI into the business, as well as that lower funnel of commerce activity, those are kind of our three pillars of focus at the minute.
Nice. Do you see, I mean, it sounds like you're like social first, paid second, and because lots of people would.
It's together. It's
Yeah.
intertwined.
Because lots of agencies many agencies are, let's say, are paid media first and foremost, and like kind of social comes secondary and so on, and it's like almost an afterthought. You've worked with a lot of clients, and so how much of an impact do you see that, or as not as an individual entity, but as a direct impact on paid? How much of an impact do you see good socials having? Because we've always gone around this debate many times. Like, you could have a great ad account with great creative in it, and it's ran properly, and it'll perform incredibly well, and it doesn't actually matter if there's not a crazy amount of content on the page and the strategy isn't as well thought out. Now, I would imagine you would disagree with that statement. So
yeah,
I think it can work in the early days of having a brand. Like, if you're starting, cash is going to be tight. Paid is going to be where you're going to be able to pick up the lowest hanging fruit to then be able to reinvest in brand marketing. However, in the early days, actually paid was probably our largest service offering for a couple of years, because that was the easiest thing to sell into people, because they were able to attribute the most business success to it.
And when our clients were smaller as well, I think that ties up to that.
But then we grew all of those clients to a certain point, significantly grew them through paid. And we saw that the brands that didn't invest in organic social just hit a point of just diminishing, well, not diminishing return, but they hit a ceiling with what they could do with paid, and they couldn't scale it any further. And there is a lot to say. Like, we know for a fact that, well, they used to, at least. They change their mind all the time, but Meta penalizes you if you're not posting consistent content and you haven't got
almost like trust signals in a way, I guess.
Trust signals, that's the right term. And I think the way the algorithms have changed from back then as well. So if we look at something like TikTok, the reach that you can get on organic social isn't dependent on how much brand awareness you have or how many followers you have. It's you could get a page that has 0 or 2 followers that could get a video that goes to 2 million. So I don't necessarily know if we're really looking at it in the right way by kind of splitting them out separately. I do feel like they are much more conjoined, and I think we've got a couple of really large brands that we work with where we manage both their paid and organic, and yes, they're different skill sets. To understand how to optimize an organic account for social is a very different. It is more creative. Not to say that paid isn't creative, but it's a different type of creative. You've got to be tapping into culture. You've got to be able to read SEO signals. You need to know what you're doing there. On the paid side of things, it's a more technical role. You have a better understanding of D2C principles. But the content that works in organic is also the content that performs the best from a paid perspective. And there is a complete correlation between the two of them. So I think they can be looked at separately, but they win better together.
Yeah.
But I do think it also depends what stage of business you're at and the type of brand that you're talking to. Like some brands will come to us and they'll be like full service social and we'll go, you need paid. Or we'll go, you need paid, but you need a lot of organic up here first because we're not going to be able to make an impact there if we haven't got it there. So it depends on the business, what the audience is going to be looking at when you're getting into it, and you're kind of pairing those two together, if that makes sense.
That makes absolute sense. So as far as the relationship between, as you see it, the relationship between organic and paid, the paid is really what's mainly driving sales, but the organic is driving brand, community, retention, trust.
Yeah.
And it can,
and search as well. Like search on TikTok is a huge thing now. So organic drives demand. Paid can obviously drive demand as well. But from organic can also capture demand. And particularly when we look at things like TikTok Shop and other commerce channels, we can see organic actually making a difference in a lot of clients' bottom line because of that. And even for clients that don't have a TikTok shop or haven't got the ability to check out on social, we can see the impact that that's having on the traffic to site and the revenue that it's bringing when organic is done properly.
And even retail sales, like footfall in stores and stuff like that.
Do you find that if you're offering social in absence of paid, it's hard to then quantify results because it's then normally based on vanity metrics like views and followers and so on?
Yeah, we're definitely reporting in a different way. And I think it has to be just understood by us and the brand that this is not like a pure revenue generating exercise. But often, I guess, when we're doing organic social for brands, they'll have a media agency that are running their paid as well. So we would still connect with their media agency to understand how they're performing, what content we can work with them on as well.
And I think because the team are all trained performance marketers as well, even if we're just looking at organic, they'll be looking at things like brand search volumes, for example, to look at the impact that we're having there. We might do some uplift studies to see what's happening. And dependent on the price point of the item, like we've got a large fashion retailer that we work with, and we can actually directly attribute a significant amount of revenue that's coming from organic social, TikTok in particular, actually. So we're getting to a different place now, and we actually been doing a lot of work internally, and it's really exciting for us to be in social because we're now getting to a place where organic can actually be seen as a revenue driver, and I think it has kind of been undervalued for a very long time. For good reason. We haven't had access to the data to be able to prove it, and the tools and products haven't been in place from the platforms. But we're moving into a new space now, which is what we're finding really exciting. Yeah.
Do you work with many clients that are like founder-led as far as content is concerned, or is it mainly?
No, but we do a lot where it's like there's like the employee-generated content. So we'll go into store or into their site and actually build almost like a creator pool of their employees that are happy and confident being in front of camera for TikTok, for example, and then we'll ideate, brief, and shoot the content alongside their team. But there's none that we have that are like founder on.
And I don't know if I think, well, it would depend on the type of founder, but I think now that you've kind of got the rise of these, TikTok first brands where founders are very comfortable on camera and stuff, they're probably going to have their social team in-house because that's part of their skill set natively. And I think this last wave of founders that we've had, because they are digitally native from just how they've grown up with social in front of them, I don't know if necessarily... I think an agency like ours could absolutely help them, but I think it's more so the larger brands that don't have that face in front of them. We have to create a personality for people to be able to connect with, and that's kind of what we do from an organic perspective. And we actually have a process that we take brands through whenever we onboard them. Is we have to define your personality, and that's like thinking about creating a person. And every time the team is deciding, should they hop on a trend? How should they respond to something? They're going, okay, well, what would this person do? And that really helps you refine down on what you should be doing. And that goes as far to say, what TV shows would they be watching? What social channels would they be on? And I think when bigger brands that maybe don't have that face that can represent them do that, that's whenever they really nail it and whenever you see the best social work happening.
Nice. Love that. So you've got your entire company is optimized around social and paid. There's no secondary services like web and so on. It's just amazing. And then in doing that, then you've gone from 2 to 60 plus people in the last 6 years.
We're about just about 70 now.
Which is quite. I mean, it's incredibly impressive. Optimized around those two core services, because it's not uncommon to hear 60 team members in a full stack agency who are juggling around a number of different departments. How has that process been? Because that's a lot of hires in a very small amount of time. Did you screw anything up along the way? Have you been pretty blessed in that process?
My God, we've messed up so much stuff. Like, we've made so many mistakes.
Yeah, it's okay to make mistakes because you learn from it. But lots of loads of great decisions, and some poor ones. I think you said, Zoe, people are the hardest part of running an agency. We are the service we deliver, how everyone collaborates together. It is the hardest part. And for us, this is our first time doing this, right? So obviously I had the events business before, but it wasn't really managing people. This is our first time. And I think we've learned a lot through the process of doing that as well.
Yeah, I think there's been a couple sort of key learnings for us. And one for me has been the structure of the business is so important. That feels like such a stupid thing to say now, but looking back at it, we got to a point where I think at one point I was managing somewhere between 12 to 15 direct reports, which is just not possible.
It's a full-time job.
Exactly. And I think I calculated that 80% of my time should be spent in one-to-ones, which is not great. But I think I think most founder-led agencies are going to get to a point like that. And it tends to be around the 15 to 20 person mark that you do that, because you haven't built up enough revenue to be able to start bringing in non-billable people necessarily outside of maybe a finance team. So the weight of the management of the business does fall on the founders at that point. And when we got to that point, that was pretty exhausting. And also, you want to be giving as much as you can to the team members that you're managing, and you can't if you're just exhausted all the time. So then we made decisions and started investing. We brought in Kelly, who's our amazing people and internal ops director. And another challenge that we really had was the creative side of things, actually. That was very difficult.
It's a tricky one, I think, especially in social, because more senior creatives have come from a more traditional route. And obviously the rise of social creatives, people have only been doing it for 6-8 years properly. So actually finding someone, the right person to be able to lead that team, nurture them, and actually truly understand social creative was really tricky.
Yeah.
Luckily we've got there now, and Mel is absolutely fantastic, but that was one of the hardest. Role was a creative director.
And we brought some people in. And I think because we were quite young. I'm about to turn 30. We started this whenever I was 23. Jack's a couple years older than me, but not very much. We got into this habit where we would interview people that had these amazing. They've worked at the BBC. They've worked at all these huge brands and stuff, and we would kind of be like, "Oh my God! Think of what they could bring to our business." But no, a big name on a CV and years of experience behind you doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get it. And we learned that lesson quite hard. And so our interview process is quite rigorous now at this point. But we did try to bring in a creative director more times than I would like to admit. And I've had to be very honest with the team about the struggles that we've been through trying to find those people, and also had their very honest feedback. And we've always had a very transparent nature of, are people the right fit? Is this going to happen? Is this going to work for us? Because people need to feel like they can learn from people in the business as well. So yeah, we've messed up a lot of things, but I think you're gonna do that. I think that's okay.
I mean, I would be shocked if you had incredibly envious. Have you self-hired, or have you always gone through agents as a recruitment agents to find roles?
97% self-hired. We've used recruitment agencies in moments of sheer shit. We need someone in ASAP. We're struggling, so we probably used them on 5 occasions or something like that. But for the most part, LinkedIn, is where we found everyone. I've not used anywhere else other than LinkedIn job posts.
I'm so glad that you said that. I'm a huge advocate for LinkedIn.
Yeah.
People normally look at me like,
good.
well, LinkedIn jobs, and they're like,
I
no,
want
it's
to know. We get
it's the
everyone
best.
from
Yeah.
there, literally. I don't
Everyone.
even know
Amazing.
where to go to find anyone.
Okay, so then in now refining your process over a long time, selfishly, what's your post LinkedIn process like? Where are you sending traffic through to, and then what does that look like? Is it a form they fill in? Is there 2 interviews? Like, what's the system?
Well, we've recently had a bit of a debate about this internally. So, like, the process is that the jobs will go out on LinkedIn. We will then have an intake of applicants. We normally have quite a high intake of applicants. Where we can, we actually get the heads of departments to manage the process, but when they're really busy, Jack will take on that process of shortlisting everyone down. Then there'll be an intro call. Traditionally, actually, Jack takes a lot of the intro calls to vet people from a cultural perspective, make sure that they are, I think, being at the level that they're applying for as well. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, everyone just coming out of uni seems to want to just apply for like a director role, and like, I don't know what's going on. But we're pretty good at kind of spotting that. And then once that vetting has happened, we'll have a short list of normally between like 3 to 5 people.
After interview one?
After interview one, technically.
Yeah, max 5, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't want to overflow the team with too many second stage interviews as well. I think it's being targeted in that. So yeah, typically 3, I would say, from like a second stage interview where it's, a task presented back to the team, further in-depth Q&A, and depending on the seniority, if they're more of a senior hire, then there'd be a third stage, which would be more of like, again, almost like a secondary intro call, but with some of the wider team.
Yeah.
Or go for coffee, lunch, whatever that might be as well.
Why did you make the decision to retain that first interview yourself? Because that must be a huge amount of your time that you're spending doing that.
Yeah, so there was a time where we got the LinkedIn recruiter tool for like a 6-month period, which allowed it to be a lot more enabled the department leads to be able to manage that. But I think we're still at a stage where I think it's really important. I know who everyone that's come, one of us knows who's coming through the business. We've got a culture that we have to uphold. I think that's a reason why people stay with us and like to work at the Zoë Shepherd is the number one thing they say is like the people that are in this organization is what I love so much about being here. So making sure that whilst it's really important to have variety and diversity in who you're bringing in, they still need to have similar degree of morals and way about how they go about life and stuff like that. So once it's past that point, I at least know and can give set the team up with the final stage interviews to give the decision in their hands. But at least I know, I'm whoever you pick from the selection here, I'm happy. And now it's for you guys to know who's going to best fit and serve the clients that they're going to be a part of and fit in within your team.
Makes perfect sense.
And I think sometimes the head departments do step in and take those intro calls, but actually from a management perspective, sometimes it makes like they're specialists in their skills. Their time is probably better spent managing their existing team and spending time with clients. So it kind of does make sense for us to manage that intro and really focus their attention on the interview process.
And I still know plenty about the service that the delivery of what they'd be working on, so I can ask them technical questions on each area. Obviously the team that then is at the second stage will really dig into that, but at least know and I'm confident in their ability on that specific, whether it's paid, for example, or organic. I know that they're not just straight up lying or like.
And sometimes we have to go again. Like sometimes, you do a batch of seconds and the team will go, they're not strong enough. They'll be like, Jack, go again. Come on, bring me someone better. And it is so important. And I think one of the other mistakes we've maybe made at times is we haven't stuck to our guns with who we need to hire or the standards, and now we really do.
Like don't always rush.
Don't rush a hire, because 6 months down the line, you're going to be in a really awkward situation with a probation, for example, or like, and it's just not worth it. And I know that's really tricky when you're running an agency and resources tight and you need people in for projects. But you would genuinely be better investing in some level of freelance resource whilst you take your time with that hiring process and make the right decision, because it's not worth it.
That's definitely something that we've learned as well and taken forward with us at the moment is, you know, in the early years, we won everything that we were pitching for, and the level of the caliber of client that we're now pitching for is so competitive. You don't just win 100% of your pitches. Unfortunately, I'd love to say that we do. And before we would sort of hire in anticipation. You know, we have a capacity, forecasting capacity, looking at scheduled and booked work, whether from a retainer's perspective plus projects. Then we'd also look at our new biz pipeline and forecast out, percentage of that figure that's gone to pitch. We'll then forecast into that to understand where we need that additional resource, what pod within each department it may sit as well. So before we would actually go and hire, before we'd sign that contract, but the economy's more challenging now. Things are taking longer than they ever have to sign a client. You might get a yes, but then you only start the work 2 months later because, those are the various factors. So we've definitely become more cautious in terms of the speed of which we bring people in on. So we're not like screwing ourselves over from a profitability perspective, or people twiddling thumbs for a few months as well.
Yeah. It's also different because we opened our US office just over a year ago, and they have just a completely different hiring economy over there. So people start within 2 weeks of you giving them a job offer, which does not happen here in the UK unless someone has unfortunately been made redundant or laid off and they're out of work at that time period. So we've had to learn different ways of managing things, but I think definitely in the early days, whenever you get that initial spike, where you're probably cheaper than a lot of people you're going after, our win rate was so high, we couldn't keep up with it. We were chasing our tails consistently, and so the hiring decisions maybe weren't as careful in some areas as they could have been. And now we are very, very strict about who we hire. Fine.
And you've just made the decision very early on in the business that you don't want to be a virtual agency. You want to be in person. Talk me through the conversation at that point, and then I just want to unpack that a little bit.
Don't think we knew anything different, to be fair, from the early stage. We were working in sort of like a co-working space to begin with, got a private office, think of WeWork, but then you move to a private area private office within that space. So we didn't really know anything different, and that was just before COVID really happened. I think that was the big transition for a lot of agencies, going more remote than once they were. So yeah, I think from us, we were before COVID 5 days a week in the office. It was a small team, but we were 5 days a week, and then ever since that, it was just sort of remained at that 3 days in, 2 days at home. But I think we were speaking about this earlier because our average age in the agency is like 27, 28. People really value that social side of it, and building connections, friendships within that, collaborating in person. So we definitely believe in that hybrid model. I know it has its downsides. It costs more. Absolutely, you don't get potentially the talent that are elsewhere as well. So it definitely has its downsides, but there's lots of upsides to it as well.
I also think from a personal progression perspective, particularly for junior team members, whenever I first started in the industry, again, it was pre-COVID, so I was in the office 5 days a week, and I just soaked up everything around me like a little sponge, literally like a fly on the wall of every single conversation I could be on. And I do think that without being in office, one, I don't think you soak up as much knowledge because you are kind of working in silos a little bit, and there are other ways to do it, but I do believe in that. And I also think you get to a point in your career where you're going to need to level up and start leading the business or driving a vision on behalf of a board if you're going to be a member of an SLT. And it's really hard to get to that point if people can't see how you interact, how you lead a team physically in person. So I think it's just a tricky one. And we've also got to bear in mind that we do still have in-person client meetings. So we need to be able to build up that those softer skills with our team, that they know how to do that. And we actually see like such a huge discrepancy. It was really clear for a while of the team members that maybe studied partly in COVID, and they didn't have the same soft skills as people going into entry-level roles had before that point.
That's interesting. You mentioned in-person client meetings. Is that why you had or just opened like that physical presence up in the US as well? Or where was that from a strategic standpoint?
Yeah, so the US was an interesting one. Firstly, we were able to go there because one of our European clients, they wanted us over in the US. But we also had a couple of other things going on at the same time, and we had team members who were moving over there for personal needs. But because we shoot a lot of content on site with clients, particularly in New York for quite a few of them, we needed to have a team in New York. They need somewhere to keep their kit. When you're working on creative, as I'm sure a lot of creatives listening to this will know, it is so much easier to get a quick edit done in person than it is virtually. And it just matched what we were doing in the UK as well. So it was important. And actually quite a lot of candidates now come through and they want you to have a physical office space because they find it quite draining or quite lonely being at home for so long. Don't get me wrong, they want it hybrid. Like they don't want to be in the office 5 days a week, but they're happy that there is an office for them to go to.
Where do you find that balance with the hybrid side? Like, what's the rule? What's the allocation?
Yeah, 3 days in, 2 days at home. We have some people that come in 5 days. Me and Zoe go in 5 days. But to be fair, we do live 3 minutes walk to the office. We've kind of set up like that. But yeah, I think that 3-2 split. But like for much larger network agencies, I've seen WPP recently doing a return to office mandate 5 days a week or 4 days a week, and there's not people aren't happy with that.
So funny. Have you seen all the memes from it?
No.
Oh my goodness! Like people, like they overstocked the fridge with milk, and people like sat at ping pong tables for their dads.
Not
really?
Like no, if you don't follow, there's an account on Instagram called Digital Chadvertising.
Yeah.
You must follow it.
Okay.
It's so
It's just
entertaining.
agency.
Is it?
Talk, yeah.
Fine. Nice. It's always a challenge, isn't it? When you're giving people the freedom to work from home. It's different if they've always had the opportunity to work from home. Do you find, presumably no, but have you found in the past a discrepancy between what is achieved in office versus not?
In terms of actual like quality of work and volume.
Output, volume, yeah.
I don't think so, actually.
I mean, because the only time we've been fully remote is when it was like COVID.
And the business was so much smaller then. Like it was a baby. I
think, some people definitely would say that they do more at home and they've got the quietness of their own space. The office can get noisy, less distraction at home. So I think there is an element of that. But it's hard to say. We've not measured it to a place where we could say for sure.
I'm not sure on that. The interesting one is we do an annual staff survey every single year, and we always ask the team, well, what do you think about the physical office environment? And you get some people that are like, and our office it's really pleasant. There's a nice buzz around it. There's different places you can go to focus if you want to. And you've got some people who are like, we want it really quiet. We want to be able to focus. This is what we want. And we've got other people that are like, give me the vibes. Like, where's the Friday music? Where's the beers? And like, we have all of that at different times and stuff. But I think it's just really interesting because finding one space that's going to please everyone, and particularly in our agency where you've got a team over TikToking in the corner, like being crazy, and then you've got paid media team members, not all of which, but some of which are very much like analytical, maybe slightly more introverted, heads down in some ways. Like finding a space that everyone is going to be happy with is going to be tricky. I think we've got a pretty good mix though, to be fair.
Get the balance.
Would you say that's the part of the business you enjoy the most? Is the team and the culture that you've created there?
It's the part we enjoy the most and the part that is the hardest at the same time. I was actually just speaking to someone about this, and an agency is hard, because, and this is really tacky to say, but it is the truth, your people are your product at the end of the day, unless you're an agency with some type of bespoke tech model. which, to be honest, most of the time when agencies have bespoke tech models, it's just a form of regurgitation of something that, not all the time, but quite often. But your people are your product, and people are complex, and you can't control that. And if someone is unhappy, whether that's in work, outside of work, or whatever, or they're not getting enough rest, for example, they're not going to be able to do their best work, and therefore your product isn't performing in such an optimized way. So that's a really difficult thing to get your head around, because that's almost a view of people that's very objective and doesn't take into consideration how unique everyone is. And I think that's one thing that we are very good at as a business, is we know our team well, and we really encourage honesty, and we're able to really bring an empathetic side to it. And sometimes too much. We have been criticized in the past before, but I think it is really important to keep that weight of empathy, because people are people at the end of the day, and we need to be kind to them. It's the part that is the most rewarding, watching people grow in their career and seeing someone go from an exec up to a director. The best. And like, we have a management structure in place, so I don't get to do all of the promotions anymore. They get to be told by their directors, as they should be. But that's the funnest part of it, and the most rewarding part. And then the other side of it is people are naturally complex, and they're going to come with challenges. So yeah.
What do your roles look like now?
You start.
Okay. It's been a bit of a shake-up. So I initially kind of started as MD, and then did that for the first 4 and a half years of the business.
Yeah.
Then I, full transparently, did become, and I don't like the use of this term because it gets misused often, but did get quite burnt out from that, just because the business had been through so many different stages, and I'd gone through like high flux of line management, building, structuring a team with multiple levels underneath it, and it really took me away from the craft. And like that's one thing, that I'm so passionate about social and what we do, and I love getting involved in it. Sometimes the teams are like, go away and get out of it, but I love it. So then I was like, I want to move on to something new. So then I hate the title, but I'm technically the CEO on paper. But my role, I'm very heavily involved in actually delivering of pitches and strategic work. Jack handles more of the upper part of that. And then I also, our managing director for the UK and our managing partner for the US report into me as well. So I help them focus on operational elements of the business, and then we'll decide, do we need to invest in a service offering? Do we need to change the way we're currently doing something? And work with them to kind of roll that out across the business.
Mm-hmm. And then for the first 4 or 5 years when Zoe was that managing director, I was sort of like new biz leads, growth leads, so both doing the marketing side, so generating the leads, and then also having the intro, taking calls through to pitch as well. Then when Zoe realised she needed to step away from sort of that managing director role, I then went in there for a year, but very much realised it wasn't what gets me going. So I've very much come back to new business and marketing again, which is sort of, I love sales, I love growth, I love seeing weirdly just numbers on a screen go up, right? So that's what gets me going, and just really, and it's always, I also love hearing from different brands the challenges they're going through, and then how we can actually best support them through that as well. And having those like business level conversations of, is it just social? Is that one component? What is the deeper part of this challenge that we can really help you with? Obviously social is going to play a part of that, but understanding that is something I love. Just speaking to like business owners, head of marketing, CMOs, whatever their title might be, I think is a great part of the role.
And it was so interesting because our FD Sarah has stepped into the MD role now, which is amazing, and she's perfect for that role. But I hope you don't mind me saying this. But when Jack was in the MD role, obviously was doing a great job of it and everything, but you kind of lost your sparkle a little bit. And like people in the office would be like, is Jack okay? Because Jack's like known in the office as like, everyone's like, Jack is just so nice. Like he's always just like good vibes, like as we all are. And like, not that you weren't good vibes, but you get so excited by a new business, and he did lose a bit of that sparkle. And then as soon as he goes back on new business, everyone's like, whoa, Jack's back.
Nice. It must be really hard getting the right people into a managing director role. And have those positions been like incubated through the company, or did you hire any of the MDs?
So the only external MD we had is Sarah, who we currently have in place. That role has been shared between Jack and I thus far. And it's a really interesting story because Sarah was actually the first FD at the first ever agency I worked at when I was 21. So my first recollection of working with Sarah was I was in like my finance induction or something, and she was like, "Okay, so do you want to opt in to the company pension scheme or something like that?" And I was like, "Sarah, what's a pension scheme?" But yeah, she was there, and then what basically happened was we were struggling to find a finance director that had worked in agencies before and really understood how to work in a creative space, and we really wanted someone to come in that was going to be embedded into the business and that finance wasn't going to be sat in a silo, which it often is. So I said to Jack, I was like, well, let me reach out to Sarah. I worked with her for a year and a half. Obviously, she was very senior and I was very junior at that time. And maybe she knows someone that could help us with it. So I reached out to her on LinkedIn and she was like, oh my goodness, I've been following you. Like, you're doing amazing. I'd love to have a call. So we had a call with her. And I was really nervous for the call. And she was like, I mean, I could send some people your way, but I would also really like to do it myself. And I was like, oh, I feel privileged. So anyway, Sarah came and interviewed. She came into the FD role. And then she also came and sat on our board. And through that, and I guess finance and operations often tend to go hand in hand, particularly in smaller agencies, because you haven't got the headroom to have two separate entities for it. So then she slowly took on our operations team. And then we were kind of sat down thinking about it. Jack was a bit like, oh, I'm not really vibing with this role type thing. And we were just like Sarah, what Jack and I need from someone in this role you have. And she was like, I would love to do it. So that's how that was kind of born. And it wasn't necessarily that we raised Sarah through the ranks because she came in as an FD, like a super senior role within the business, but it was that we saw something in her and then moved her into that role because it felt like the right place for her and it was something that she wanted to do. But we have done a lot of raising other people through the ranks to more senior roles. So Katie, who is our senior social media director, leads our organic social team and our content team. Actually, she started in the business as a social media manager 4 years ago, and she's leveled up 4 different times throughout that time period. Same with Joey. He came in as a senior when he might have
potentially.
He came in as a senior. I think it might have been senior paid media manager or a paid media manager, and now he is a senior paid media director leading our paid team. So I think where we've been so young and have been afforded the very privileged opportunity to have titles that we wouldn't have necessarily been able to get because we didn't have the qualifications on paper for them, we've felt it's really important for us to afford our teams the same opportunity in that.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And I imagine it's so amazing seeing someone that joins the company and to get into a role like that.
Bought in, and they really take a lot of pride of that as well.
You do have to be really careful though not to over promote because you don't want, and sometimes people think that, and I've done it before, where you think that you can what is it, bite off more than you can chew? Is that the saying?
Or just slapping a title on someone that's like head of paid.
A lot of young agencies do that. They got a
we hired a head of paid media in the early days. We did hire a head of paid media, and there wasn't anyone in the paid media team. So who were they the head of?
Nice. Yeah. You have got this. I mean, it sounds like you've got I don't know if you'd associate like this, but it sounds like you're at least moving towards a very corporate structure in the business.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
It's needed.
Absolutely fine. I think it's all about the next stage of growth, and that's what is sort of required to be able to do that. We could run the business very differently if we wanted it to be like a lifestyle business, if we wanted to like really squeeze it from like a profitability perspective. There'll be many agencies out there that are more profitable than us at a smaller size, but they're gonna if they try and push past where they are, they're just gonna break. Having that structure, for our people, for our finance, for our operations and delivery, if we don't have that, if we want to get to, which we do, want to get to sort of like 100 people head count, it will just fall apart and it'll be a whole bigger mess to sort of catch up on. So it's really an investment for us of the long term.
Yeah. And I think sometimes like we have fallen into the past and the trap, and it's really easy to get into this where you make decisions that are going to be positive in the short term, but they're going to cause you pain in the long term. And I think we're really focused on long-term gains now.
What is the long-term vision? Like, are you building to, ride the wave forever and just see how big you can take Social Shepherd, or are you, working towards an exit at some point?
It's a really tricky question because we do love what we do so much. We do speak to people that are interested in buying us and acquiring us, but for me, it's more about building the relationship with them. So if one day that is something we want to explore, then I have those sort of connections built up and know who's sort of in the market to do so. But for us, like, the US side of it is just over 12 months in. There's so much opportunity there for us to continue growing. And I guess what would we do if we didn't have this?
Yeah.
That's always like the question. I think sometimes, I'm 32, you're almost 30, Zoe. Sorry. But, like, we're not going to just, same for all of us. We're not just going to retire and it sounds nice. I think in the chaos in the moment of like, God, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, what's happening here? I can't sleep. But then, so retirement sounds great at that moment, doesn't it? But then when you look at it, we're all driven people. We want to build things and grow things. So it would ultimately be the thing that I would then want to then create again has to be so much more than what I have now, which is going to be hard to beat.
Yeah.
So I think even if, with agencies, it's very rare that anyone sells and then steps away day one. There's always an earn-out clause and an exit plan, which can go on 2-3 years anyway. So even if you were to do that and go into a larger group, then we could still be very much running the Social Shepherd. And because our thought is, we want to be, the best, the largest, the most respected social agency. Obviously in the UK and US right now, but is there opportunity later down the road more globally?
I think that's it. Like, we want to go back to the like promise that we made ourselves at that like 7-month mark when we had that conversation. We want to build something of true value, and I believe like we have done that with what we have. But I just feel like social as like a marketing medium has like so much more potential than we've even necessarily grown to at this point in time. So whether that's us doing that just purely the Social Shepherd with organic growth, whether that's partnering with someone else, we don't know what that looks like. It's very much dependent on like what is the right sort of point and stuff. But for now, our focus is really just to continue growing, continue being profitable, which we always have done.
Creating opportunities, But social, like we say this all the time, is like social is like now everything. That's like, how people consume everything. If
like a brand doesn't have, it's not even social first. It's just social needs to be the core of your strategy. Like, yes, 100%. There's so many opportunities for things off the back of that. But even just creative cues for email, creative cues for everything can come off as social, because social is a representative of the culture that the everyday person wants to see. It's their thoughts and their feelings. So I think that's
still
what's
like an
so exciting for us, because even if we're not hands-on doing the doing, there's so much data that we have access to that we can help people drive really exciting campaigns and initiatives with.
You mentioned earlier that you think that AI is going to make like media buying obsolete and so on, which means you've given that a lot of thought and are obviously so bullish on social, and I agree, we're only going to that place. Like, brand is going to be more important than ever, and story especially. What are your predictions for where the industry is going to go in that sense?
I'm not. It's not just, I guess, marketing overall, but I think it takes over pretty much everything and every industry to some description. I think social, though, more specifically on the creative side, I feel it is more protected than maybe the media buying side. We go into store, shoot content with the employees of that business to create that personality and voice. I don't see how we're going to necessarily replicate that with AI in that experience. But media buying definitely getting much more automated. They're going to become creative strategists, not media buyers, ultimately. There's tools out there now that we're playing around with that do bulk ad uploads for Facebook. So it's taking that tedious and painful process of building campaigns that you might have, launching 30 ads at a time in different countries, that can speed up that process as well. So not only AI from a media buying perspective, but other tools that are automating stuff. So I think like headcount, there's going to be, but there's going to be more expectation from clients. I think AI is going to make them expect more output for the same money. Do clients actually pay agencies less because they still only want that volume of output that they've always been receiving? And now, because you're AI enabled, do they expect you now to charge them less?
Yeah.
Or do the prices stay similar, but the expectation of volume of content? Probably more that one, especially for paid, where Meta are saying you need creative depth, creative volume in your ad account. AI is definitely going to help that. So I think that's where it goes.
Yeah,
tricky.
I think so. I mean, we did our all company strategy day in February and March for the US, and we said to the team, like, really honestly, we were like, your jobs as you know it will not stand in a year to 2 years time, 2 years if we're lucky. And it wasn't to scare them, it was to say, like, we all have to get really comfortable with change. And I think the thing with AI is it will create jobs that we can't even conceive of in our mind at this point in time. So I think it will reduce the need for headcount in terms of headcount to revenue sort of ratio that we've traditionally known, because some of the budget that you would have traditionally invested there, you'll invest in tech, for example. But I do agree with Jack. I think it will be more of a creative role. But I think what you'll need is the best thinkers and the best creative strategists. And this is like such a weird statement to say, but there's no like room for mediocrity, and like you will want the best possible people, the best thinkers. So I guess my bigger query around is, what does it do to entry level roles where people are still learning those skill sets? And we actually filmed a podcast ourselves about this yesterday, because I was like, well, the curriculums of what people get taught at like universities and schools are going to completely change, because they're not going to need to know how to do the doing, they're just going to need to know how to do the thinking. So then what does that look like? There's just so many unknowns. But I think in the short term, we're really focused on getting the team building really concrete strategies, even from those more junior roles where they are traditionally more executionally focused.
It's a really interesting thing to think about, and I completely agree with everything you've said. But I even think, like, going a step beyond that, I think, like, ultimately we will be in a place where even the thinking side of things, because of the assets that you've built over years and years, and the knowledge that you have, like, you just upload all the campaigns that you've ever had into its own engine, and you create your own. And I ultimately think that the best agencies will end up rolling themselves into some kind of AI model themselves initially, and then eventually it'll be big scale roll ups, and then at some point everything will just be ran by free, centralized businesses. But in the short term, like, a company like yours is in such a, I mean, you must be exhilarated about the prospect of AI, because it's your ticket to accelerate and really cut out the whole bottom end of the market, which you probably don't concern yourself with, because you're getting a couple hundred inbound leads a month. But it's an exciting thing to explore.
Yeah. Sure. I guess the thing is, when you from an AI perspective, when you say you can upload your best ad creatives and then it will create you more, it certainly will. But I guess where the original thinking come from is whether AI, I'm sure it will be
eventually
able to get
be
there.
sophisticated enough to you would afford to examine the thought patterns across the whole. Yeah, because it would just be volume of data, wouldn't it? Really, at that.
Yeah.
And so much data points into a click-through rate, a hold rate. How far people watched, so it understands the cues of that. It's already, like, obviously transcribing a lot of the creative analysis tools for Facebook ads. Transcribing UGC and then rewriting it as if you're that brand, understanding the visual identity of it, the hook, the offer, breaking all of those data points down, and then you're able to plug that in and create fresh assets from it.
The thing that I find interesting about it is like, I kind of liken it to best practice. If everyone follows best practice, then everyone is at the same level, because best practice tells everyone to do the same thing. There is going to have to be a level of either people have more sophisticated AI, one agency has this over another agency, or they have better thinking, better skill set, better people, because if everyone just uses AI in the exact same way, then we're all going to be on the same level.
Well, it'll come down to brand in that sense. And I think that, you know, you have seen obviously personal brand be so powerful the last few years, and only going to continue to go that way. If everyone's delivering, which in some cases largely are, there's thousands of paid agencies out there, thousands of social agencies out there. You know, we absolutely believe we do things better than other social agencies and things like that, but the service is largely the same. It's your ability, your brand, your the way you communicate, how you do things, and you know how you sell that in. So like personal brand's going to become more important, I think, as agency founders, and how you communicate your value versus someone else. Because if we're all doing the same thing,
do you think we're at a danger of over-reliance on AI and therefore loss of individual thought and that creativity that makes you so good?
Yes, 100%. And we're doing some work on this internally with our team, because I think we've seen some people maybe take AI for like internal emails and stuff like that, and you can spot it from a mile off, and we're like, guys, okay, come on, let's talk about how we do this here. And yes, 100%. And I think it's about training people with the right way to think about it, because then it does the opposite of what we're intending it to do.
Which is okay for internal team right now, but then it's going to make hiring a difficult thing in the future.
Well, it does, and but that's not even just like to our industry. That's like universities. Like, how does anyone know that anything is authentic at this point in time?
I'm hiring a new copywriter at the moment, and I'm deliberately hiring that role as it's copywriter / creative strategist, and it's like, this is for the copywriter that was a copywriter and now knows that AI is really a big problem for them. So I want them at that mid-transitional stage. But oh my God, the trial tasks we're getting through, like most things are just not even like rehashed AI, just like AI's all the way through. It's like copy. It's like they've uploaded our Instagram page. They've got the tonality and the formatting right, but then it's just like it's flashing it out, and that's a problem.
We actually, so we've recently brought in a copywriter into the business, but they're a copywriter by trade, naturally a sort of script writer, but more of a creative. And that's been the best mix for us. We've seen such a level up of our creative since we brought him into the business. So I think you're completely right in the sense of it has to be that creative thinking first. Like that's where the value is in. But yeah, you can spot AI stuff a mile away. And I also interviewed someone in the US the other week, and I was like, this deck is entirely... Like, there's not a single piece of original copy in this.
It's like lost its soul.
Yeah.
Basically. Soul, heart.
And also, like, M dashes. I know that they are grammatically correct, but they are a telltale.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, there are some very fundamental formatting things. Yes. That's exactly it. Yeah, 100%. So bringing it out of the business and coming back to you guys for a minute, work-life balance must be quite a difficult thing for you guys, or is it?
Yeah.
I would say it's pretty much feels like 6 days a week on, 1 day a week off, I would say. Yeah. Even though on the weekends, both days we might, you know, on a Sunday we might do a few hours. But you're already thinking, aren't you? You wake up on Sunday, you're already thinking of the next day. So you're in that mindset of sort of work. Saturday's definitely most of our downtime. Yeah. And I think, Monday to Friday is just full on from the moment you wake up till you go to sleep at 10 o'clock, basically. So
it's been a bit of a journey for all of us.
Does that matter? I don't know. I don't think it does.
So you're working in the day in the office and coming home and still continuing to work at night?
Quite often, yeah.
Because through necessity or choice?
Both. And because I think, like, when we first started, there was like 3 years where, like, we genuinely did not stop working, and I actually don't have the stamina to do that anymore. Like, I need my 8 hours sleep. I'm cranky if I'm not on. I'm already impatient enough. Like, I need it. So really for us, we prioritize work and sleep. Like, those are two, well, for me anyway. Those are the most important things. And like, I would say that we have definitely, and this is why it's so good we've done it together, because we have, sacrifice is the wrong word, because we've chosen to do it and we love what we've done, but we haven't
understanding, basically.
We haven't done some of the things people would have traditionally done in their early 20s whenever we started the agency and stuff. We have prioritized work. We're happy that we've done that. Like, we're reaping the rewards of that.
Yeah,
That's
we're
all
not
good.
sad to say that we've done it in a way.
And we're so privileged to be able to do this anyway. But I think there was like a point, I think, because last year when we got engaged and planned a wedding in 12 months, I think that was the only time I ever got really frustrated at the business, because it was so busy. We had so much going on. It was quite a stressful period to go through. And we had tried to take the week before the wedding off, and I ended up working for more than half of that week because we had so much stuff going on. And I was really frustrated that I didn't feel like I had been able to enjoy that period of planning a wedding because of the business. And I think that's the first time I was like, oh, this is a bit frustrating. But that passes quickly, and there's been
and you wouldn't have been able to have that
exactly
that wedding that you had as well if we didn't have the business. You know, that enabled us to pay for it. So
so like work-life balance, to me personally, I don't think they're separate. And like I talk to the team about this sometimes, and some people disagree with you. I'm like, that's okay. Like, everyone's allowed their own view on what they want their life to be, but I love what I'm doing, therefore it's my life. And like, I work when I need to work. Sometimes I have to work more than I necessarily want to, but that not really actually. It's more than maybe I should because I need to get rest, for example. But I don't see them as separate things. To me, it's all, and I think to you as well, it's all combined.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
How do you deal with confrontation between the two of you when it relates to the business? Do you see eye to eye all the time on business decisions?
There's, I would say, largely very little confrontation, but definitely don't always see eye to eye in that. And I think, you know, sometimes, you know, we have somewhat, you know, separate roles, so we might not see or speak to each other in the office for the whole day. I'll then say something on the way home, and Zoe will be like, I need 30 minutes, we can chat about it.
Yeah, we have to be quite like... Because I, for me, whenever I go into the office with the team, I give my soul to, like, and when I come out of it, I'm like, I can breathe again. Even if I'm just like sat at my desk, like it's so intense for me. Whereas I feel like you're a bit more balanced in your approach to things.
Yeah, I'm probably like more level through the whole day.
Yeah. Whereas like my energy really goes into those like 8, 9, 10 hours that I'm in the office for it. So whenever we come out of it, and then Jack's like,
I've got these ideas, I've got these ideas.
And I'm like, sorry, brain needs to decompress. But we're quite honest with each other about that. And if I do it to you and you're just like, can we not talk about work right now? I really need to like get back into a different mindset, because you have to rest, and like, your brain doesn't work. And like over the last couple of years, and you've been through it too, like our cognitive function is so important. Like if we're not sleeping, like if we're not able to, like our brains aren't working, and everyone kind of knows that feeling of like when you've done too much, your brain's worked too hard, and you're trying to do something that's really, really important, but your brain does not compute. Like it's not a good place to be in, and therefore you've got to really look after your mental and your physical health in order to be able to do that. We're better at protecting our mental health, I would say, than our physical health, but it is really important.
How do you find the balance with physical health? Because working 6 days a week, every week is a lot, especially if you're working evenings as well.
Yeah.
We don't. We're currently in a trial with a gym that we've been to once.
I think, I was saying this to someone else the other day, it's just an excuse. Like if you don't go to the gym, you say I'm too busy, too tired. That's just an excuse, I think. Yeah. Which, don't get me wrong, that's what we say as well to ourselves, right? I think, I've gone through waves of gym 6 times a week, you know, dialed in, focused, nutrition, everything like that. And then there's like now, it's the last thing on my mind as well. So it's very that, like, am I connecting a motivation and a goal towards what that is? And if I don't have that in the gym, then...
Do you not worry that in having such large goals in business, which you're undoubtedly going to achieve much quicker than other people that have similar goals, but without a clear endpoint to that goal, because it's finite at the moment, if health isn't the number one priority in your life, then it might never be the priority, and then what's the point in doing the whole business in the first place?
Very good point.
Yeah.
Tell me more. Tell me that again.
For 997. I'll give you my whole help.
Yeah, I need some accountability here. No, I mean that is a very, very, very fair point.
I think we do have a plan. We just don't. We're very. The plan could have many different routes to it, and I think we're quite fluid in that. So I think we're very focused on like we know what we need to do in order to get ourselves there, and then when the time is right. I don't know. I'm a bit hippie in that sense. I do genuinely feel like everything tends to work out, and then you add other layers.
You know, first and foremost, create a great business. Think of that as a priority, and then if you do want to exit, then it's the easiest bit. You know, it can be an easy process to go through. If not, you've got a management team structure. You've got the right people in place to run it for you, and you have a great business that runs by itself. I think there's the options there, but yeah, fitness is something we need to pick up on. So,
do you think I suppose
this is really bugging me.
Away from your personal priorities, then, because it's just that business is the priority. Do you believe that you can have it all?
No, you have to sacrifice something, and that's the decision that you make. I don't. Maybe like if you've got to a point where you've maybe sold something, you're building something else, and you're able to bring in all of the talent that you need to take some of that pressure off you from the top. You're still going to go through stressful periods. I think for us, you know, I think Jack invested like $2,000 and started the business and paid that back very quickly. So we're still in that, like, we're rolling with it, if that makes sense. And I think it's a tricky thing. Like now we add like another layer onto it, and we don't need to go into it here, but like at some point we will probably want to start a family. What does that look like whenever I'm still very much involved in the business, and we'll need to be after that. So I don't think you can have everything.
No.
And I think you'll always have to sacrifice something, and that's a very conscious decision that you need to make.
Well, and like it's always people say like the grass is greener type of thing as well. There's always, I think as entrepreneurs, there's always something else you want to do or achieve. There's always a goal to work towards. So that's probably it's what keeps us going, but it's also the most challenging thing about it, because you may never achieve what you actually want to achieve.
And it's a bit of like, because we do it together as well, we're consistently like, we know what we want together for our future. So like if at one point one of us like, oh, this is really hard, the other one will like pull us back up to it. So it kind of makes us keep going a little bit.
Do you think it's an unfair, unique advantage, you two being business partners and life partners?
Yeah, 100%. You weren't that quick to answer that, but
she should get me.
I mean, unfair. If you looked at it from a personal perspective, people would say no, because we've had a lot of stress in our personal life because of it. From a business perspective, probably yes. Yeah,
I'd say that. Yeah, could we have had a better relationship outside of work? Not that it's bad, obviously, at all. This is not a therapy session, but yeah, like, you know, other people spend more quality time. I guess they could argue with their partners, but I guess sometimes we think working together and ideating and coming up with new routes is quality time.
We have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like it's really bloody stressful at the same time. Please don't get me wrong. Like it's not all rainbows and roses. But running an agency running any business is always going to be stressful. Like if it's not stressful, you're probably not doing it right. Or not necessarily trying to grow it as quickly. Maybe like you can absolutely have businesses that are maybe easier, have a lesser level of stress if it's more of a lifestyle business from that perspective, and that is absolutely okay. Like one is not better than the other. They just suit different lifestyles and different goals, which again, everyone has different goals. Yeah.
Well, talking of doing something fun, and this not being a therapy session, you might need one after this. I want to finish on something fun. I want to play a little game of Mr. and Mrs. agency style.
You're taking me back to my hen do.
But instead of facing your backs to each other, I'd like you to both look left and right. And what you're going to do is, you can look at me for now, is if you're choosing yourself, you know, we understand the game, Mr. and Mrs. I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to choose one or the other. You're either going to point at yourself, or you're going to point to the other person, but you're going to have to be quite subtle with the way that we do this. And I'll ask you 5 questions. I won't give you the answers until we finish, and we'll see how well you two understand each other's dynamics. First of all, who is the better people manager? Who's better at handling tough client conversations? Who comes up with the best ideas?
Depends on the category.
No, there's no criteria for that.
Probably me.
Who struggles more with shiny object syndrome? Who finds it harder to switch off from work? Well, very good. You got one wrong, and there was one disagreement. That was who comes up with the best ideas.
But I think it depends. Like creatively, me, 100%.
It's the best question
but
to get
he's
that.
better at like the probably business ideas.
Amazing. Well, Zoë, Jack, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
jumping
so
on.
much for having us.
Cheers, guys.